All right, contract administration for work zone safety. My name is Brett Morgan. I work for DOTD. I've been with the department for 28 years now. Started off in construction in the project engineer's office. Was there for a couple years, went to pre-stressed concrete and steel inspection, and ended up doing temporary traffic control inspection. That's what I've been doing for the last 25 years. My job with the department is I have to ride every construction project in the state at least 2 times a year and do a work zone inspection evaluation of every project. So I'll ride through the project, see if anything is wrong, things need to be corrected or adjusted. I send reports out to the project engineer, who in turn sends that to the contractor to be corrected out there on the job site. Once that is done, they have to make a note to me that it has been corrected. I go back out to the site and verify that those things have been corrected. So as a LPA agency, it's going to be your job to be doing this on the projects that you are overseeing. You need to check traffic control pretty much daily. We have a lot of problems with traffic control getting blown out of the way, knocked over, things getting dirty, barricades getting turned wrong. And our number one reason for all this is we're trying to reduce crashes in work zones. When we reduce crashes in work zones, we are reducing fatalities, serious injuries, and lawsuits. Lawsuits are really eating us up. I've been involved in a lot of litigation in the past, and a lot of times we've had a incident or a crash on a job site, and it really had nothing to do with the traffic control, but these lawyers find ways to make it look like we was insubordinate in our job, overlooking things, taking shortcuts, and that's the reason that their client got into this crash or incident on our project. So very important to do these inspections and document them. Documentation is very important. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on. So as far as agenda today, we're going to define a few things in temporary traffic control, what some things are. We're going to talk about specifications. None of this stuff has been made to be memorized. There's specifications written for temporary traffic control. We have our standard specifications manual. We have temporary traffic control standards. We have project specific plans. We have to verify that we're using the correct plan and the correct specification and apply that to our job site. All jobs are required to have a traffic control supervisor provided by the contractor. It is their duty to inspect these projects and make them safer and to make sure that they're in compliance with the traffic control plan. So we'll go through the requirements of those, and then we'll get into the inspection of temporary traffic control. What to look for when you do inspections, morning, afternoon. We have to do inspections at night. We have to do inspections under adverse environmental conditions such as rain and fog, things of that nature. So we'll go through that, and then we'll discuss the traffic control diaries. These are very important because when we're involved in litigation, these are usually the first thing that the plaintiff's attorneys are going to subpoena. They're going to go through our traffic control diaries and verify that we're filling them out correctly and accurately. It is going to be your job to review these diaries that the contractor is filling out and verify that they have the correct information on there. And then crash testing of traffic control devices. Every device that we're using out there on the road has to be crash tested. And what that means is it has to pass this level of crash worthiness, and it's called MASH, the Manual for Assessing Safety Hardware. And what that does is verify that if someone runs off the road or hits one of our devices, that it will yield or break away and not cause extensive damage to the vehicle, and will not allow debris or detachable parts to go into the passenger compartment of the vehicle. Why is highway work zone safety important? First thing, we want to ensure we have a safe environment. When we say safe environment, it's something that you have to get used to, because when we discuss that, first thing that comes to mind is motorists. But it's not just motorists out there that we're looking out for. We have pedestrians, we have motorcyclists, bicyclists, and one of my most important things to me is our workers that are out there. They're out there vulnerable, they have a job to do, they can't keep their eyes on traffic all the time, so they are depending and relying on temporary traffic control for their safety. All right. We also want to prevent crashes. We have serious crashes. We have fender benders. We have just minor incidents. All of those things are recipes for disaster. They will get us involved in litigation. In the worst case scenario, we have a fatality, and that's what we're trying to prevent. So on DOTD projects, every project needs to have a traffic control plan. It can be something very basic that comes from the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is going to be our federal minimum specifications. It could be a project-specific plan, which means it's very detailed, it's drawn to scale. There's street names and station numbers and all kind of things that make this plan specific to this unique project in this particular part on the roadway. And then in between those two, we have our temporary traffic control standards, which is just standards that's not project specific. They are more detailed than the MUTCD requirements, but they're not quite as detailed as a project specific plan. So it tells us where our signs go, where our channelizing devices and portable concrete barrier, if we're using that. All of that is laid out in the traffic control plan, and we need to make sure that we're following that plan. If something happens and we're involved in litigation, if we're not following our traffic control plan, we don't have a leg to stand on to fight that in court. We can't defend that. So we need to try our best to follow that plan as closely as we can so we can defend what we have out there on the roadway. No traffic needs to start unless there is an approved, no traffic control should start until we have an approved traffic control plan for that project. It could be something as simple as the traffic control standards. If we're doing a basic overlay, then you're going to use a standard sheet for the paving TTC 04. It just shows where the signs go, where the flagger goes, the flagger taper, how long that taper is, and then the actual workspace. So we need to make sure we're using that plan and it has been approved, and we have got approval from DOTD before we start installing our traffic control devices. All right, so the MUTCD I mentioned before, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, this is going to be our federal minimums. We have to follow this as a minimum, or we're going to get federal dollars withheld from us. We don't want to do that. So just say, for instance, the MUTCD, it calls for an error board to be used anytime we close a lane on a freeway. Louisiana goes above and beyond that and says anytime we close a lane on a multi-lane roadway, it doesn't matter if it's a divided, undivided, freeway, whatever, we're required to use an error board for that lane closure, and that error board has to be a type C. So we can go above and beyond the MUTCD, but we can't fall below that standard. We do have a new edition of the MUTCD called the 11th edition. It was published in December of 23. Each state has 2 years to get into compliance. So by December of this year, we have to be in compliance of this new MUTCD. The previous one was the 2009 edition. So we're on track to get our traffic control standards and our specifications updated to meet the minimum requirements of this new publication of the MUTCD. Going through the traffic control plan, theoretically what needs to happen is contractor bids on the job, they get the job, they should review the traffic control plan, verify that there's no issues or foresee any problems. If they do, those problems need to be addressed at the pre-construction meeting. I go to a lot of pre-construction meetings, and a lot of times temporary traffic control gets overlooked. They just don't take it as serious. But that contractor needs to go over that plan, review it, and then take that plan out to the field and verify that the plan that they have is going to fit or work where they need it to. And if it's not, that needs to be discussed at the pre-construction meeting to get a resolve for that. And the main reason that's important is because it's a lot safer and easier to take care of those problems in the office instead of out there in the field. You get half of your traffic control installed, and then you run into this problem, and now you have a problem, not really sure what to do, and you got traffic passing by you going 50, 60, 80 miles an hour, so it makes it dangerous. A lot of these things can get resolved before heading out into the field. So whose job is it to make the work zone safer? All right, you got the traffic control supervisor or the traffic control technician, the LPA or the CE&I project engineer, the LPA responsible charge, and the DOTD project coordinator. And the answer is all of them. It's everyone's job to review that. We have a little problem with DOTD as far as inspection, the way it goes, the project engineers and inspectors out on the job. Some of them think that it is the contractor's ultimate responsibility. They are responsible for temporary traffic control, but if we see something incorrect, we need to make a note to the contractor so they get that corrected as soon as possible. So to define a few things, first thing we're going to discuss is a Louisiana traffic control technician. This is a one-day course. It is a prerequisite to be a traffic control supervisor. We go through the basic standards of temporary traffic control. We start at just cones and drums and signs. And when we start discussing this, if we have students in class that has not taken the actual training before, they think a sign is a sign. But there's different classifications of signs. We have guide signs, we have warning signs, we have regulatory signs, and they all mean different things. So we go through the different meanings of them. Channelizing devices, we go through them as well, as far as when we could use cones, when we have to use drums, if we're using barricade warning lights, when we use those. And then finally, we get into the setup, installation, removal, and maintenance of a basic flagging operation and a standard lane closure on a multi-lane roadway. At the end of the course, they have to take an exam. It is 50 multiple choice questions, and they have to pass that in order to move on to the traffic control supervisor. The traffic control supervisor is an additional 2-day course. And like I said, technician is a prerequisite. They have to take technician and pass it before they move on to the supervisor. We get more in depth in more complex traffic control schemes, such as closing lanes on limited access roadways. We may have to close ramps. We may have to close the entire road. So we go through all those steps to handle those more complex traffic control scenarios. We also get into litigation. What happens if you're involved in a lawsuit? A lot of guys and gals out on the roadway, a lawyer will come out on the job site and start asking questions about a crash that happened on that job site. We go through the steps involved with that. As the first thing you do is you go to your supervisor. Your construction company has an actual lawyer. The insurance company will have a lawyer. So we go through all the steps and we define what litigation is, what discovery is, interrogatories, depositions, and your responsibility and role as a traffic control supervisor if you're involved in those. There's another written exam at the end. It's 50 multiple choice questions, and you have to pass that. According to our 2016 standard spec books, in order for a contractor to have a traffic control supervisor on that project, they have to have 1 year of field experience in work zone temporary traffic control. That is another thing that contractors miss in their when they put in traffic control supervisors out there. We have traffic control supervisors on projects that really only have a couple months of experience. They took all the classes, but they don't have that experience, and we need to verify that they have that experience before they start doing traffic control supervisor duties on our project. All right, the way it kind of goes down is AGC offers a traffic control technician and traffic control supervisor course monthly, and contractors send guys and gals to this course. After that course is complete, they will get a certificate of completion issued by ATSA and AGC. At the pre-construction meeting, the contractors need to submit these certificates of completion to the project engineer or the LPA CE&I charge to verify that who's out there inspecting traffic control has had the proper training. So questions. The traffic control supervisor works for the local public agency. Is that true or false? And that answer is going to be false. The traffic control supervisor actually works for the contractor. Now, the LPA agency should have traffic control supervisors out there on the project. They are required to have traffic control supervisors out there as well, but the contractor's traffic control supervisor is responsible for the traffic control on the job. The next question, the traffic control technician has to pass a written exam after taking the work zone traffic control technician course. And that answer is true. All right, there is a written exam for every class that we do in temporary traffic control: flagger, traffic control technician, and traffic control supervisor. Requirements for work zones. All right, we have to follow these specifications. Our 2016 standard specifications, or the Purple Book, has our temporary traffic control standards. Temporary traffic control is in section 713 of the Purple Book. Signs and pavement markings are found in 1015, and they will reference you to different parts of the manual as well. For instance, if you were trying to figure out what kind of sheeting goes on the signs, signs are in temporary traffic control, section 713, and it will refer you to a couple other sections, 729 and 1015, to verify that you were supposed to be using type 3 high intensity prismatic sheeting for all signs, and if they're orange, they have to be a type 10, diamond grade, or crystal grade. So we find all that inside our standard specification book. So you need to be familiar with that book and where the temporary traffic control is for that. The traffic control supervisor has to have several things when they're on the project. They should have a set of all current contract documents. They should have a contract, they should have traffic control standards, they should have a copy of the MUTCD. All of these documents are given to the traffic control supervisors when they take the course. They get a copy of the MUTCD, Louisiana traffic control standards. They get a copy of the quality guidelines for traffic control devices. That is a document published by ATSA, and it is pictures, comparison charts. Shows you what's acceptable, marginable, and rejectable in our temporary traffic control devices. For instance, it'll give you a picture of a cone that's in good shape, it's acceptable. They'll have a picture of another cone that is in terrible shape, and it is rejectable. And then they'll have another picture of one that's in pretty good shape, and it's marginal, and what that means is that you need to start making plans to get that device replaced pretty quick. So they get all that information, all those documents at the traffic control supervisor course. The traffic control supervisor duties: provide traffic control management and supervision services at the project site. So traffic control supervisors can have multiple duties, and most of them do. Contractors, they send a lot of people to class just because they are required to have a traffic control supervisor or a technician in some cases on the project during all working hours. So they will send equipment operators and superintendents and people that do all kind of different jobs, but they're going to be out there on that site, so they're covered in the contract. But if they or the traffic control supervisor is supposed to be doing those duties, if they have a problem with traffic control and they're on a piece of equipment, they need to get off of that piece of equipment and go straight up to traffic control. That's where, you know, a lot of problems lie. Go to a job and where's the traffic control supervisor? We got some issues. I got a couple signs knocked down. Well, he's over there on that excavator and he's digging a ditch. He's got to get off the excavator and we got to go fix the signs, because that should be the number one focus. They need to be readily available at all times to perform the TCS duties as required by the contract. So significant projects, interstates, multi-lane high-speed roadways with a high ADT, they're required to have a traffic control supervisor on site during all working hours. All right. Insignificant projects, rural jobs, or maybe some low ADT, low speed projects, they can delegate the inspections to a traffic control technician, but they need to be within a reasonable driving distance in case something happens on the job site, so they could get there. There's not really much of a time frame set in there, so I usually say if they're within an hour, they need to be there within an hour to correct any problems that may come up on the job. Or if there's an incident or a crash, they need to be there to document everything. All right. In some cases, like the significant projects, the traffic control supervisor, they are not allowed to leave the project as long as work is going on. And it does not matter if they're working in the travel lane, outside the shoulder, on the shoulder, in the median. If they're working on site, they have to be there. One of the biggest problems that we have with work zone traffic control is flaggers. We are required to have certified flaggers out on the project site. A lot of times that does not happen. They have not had the proper training. As a traffic control supervisor, it is their responsibility to make sure that the flaggers they have has been trained properly and they have the right equipment to do the job that they're set out to do, such as 6-foot stop slow paddles, fluorescent yellow-green vests, and make sure that they're not standing in the roadway. It's a big responsibility for flaggers, because that job is super dangerous, because the traveling public, when they're driving down the road, a flagger is typically the first human that the traveling public encounters out there on the roadway. So it's dangerous. They're not very visible. There's not a lot of stuff drawing attention to them. So as a traffic control supervisor, they need to verify that that flagger is visible for at least 500 feet. Some things of what not to do. We do a lot of flagger training, and that's some things. We go through about 2 hours worth of safety stuff, and talking on the phone, having earbuds in, not paying attention, having no escape route. All of those things are bad for flaggers. It makes it very dangerous for them. You can see in the background, we got a sight distance problem. We have a vertical curve. Someone tops the hill and you got a flagger standing on top of the hill, not paying attention. And flaggers typically make up about 4% of fatalities in work zones nationwide. This one here is a lot better. Our flagger's paying attention. They got a 6-foot stop slow paddle. They got their taper, which draws more attention to them. He's got his fluorescent yellow-green vest on. But the problem is he's got a piece of equipment parked in the buffer space. The reason that this picture is important is because if we have a distracted driver, and we have a lot of that now, cell phones are making a lot of distracted driving out on our roadways and our construction zones. Someone runs through that taper and they hit that front end loader. It takes out the front right of their vehicle. They lose control. They're going 60 miles an hour possibly, which is going to be about 90 feet per second. And you can see the equipment back there in the background past the buffer space. They could have workers there, and there's a vehicle coming toward them at 90 feet per second, and the driver has no control of that vehicle. That's the purpose of the buffer space. It is a recovery space. If someone runs through that taper, they have enough room to come to a stop before hitting a piece of equipment or one of our workers. So in that case, we are required in most situations to have that minimum longitudinal buffer space. And it is according to speed, and we'll go through that in just a little while. Flaggers not paying attention. Flaggers shouldn't have other workers congregating around their work area. It's a distraction to them. We got our stop slow paddle just stuck in the cone in the middle of the lane. Flaggers have their backs to traffic. This is just bad. I actually took this picture and asked the flaggers if they had certification, and neither one of those flaggers had had any training whatsoever. So in that case, they got to get out of the roadway until they get the proper flaggers out there, and they can continue working that situation. This one here is pretty obvious. This happens quite a bit. Flaggers sitting on tailgates of trucks or sitting in their cars, not paying attention. All it takes is one vehicle coming through and hitting that vehicle, and we have an injured or a fatality for our flagger. Another one pretty obvious here, and this is the kind of thing that happens quite a bit. Flaggers not paying attention on their cell phone. I wish we could make a rule that says that they're not allowed to have cell phones at the flagger stations, but that could cause a problem. One thing that some flaggers are doing now, we do require two-way radios for our flaggers, but there's a lot of situations where flaggers are taking pictures of the final car coming through and sending it to the other flagger to verify. Gives a picture to that other flagger to know that is the last vehicle coming through, and they can release their traffic after that. So that is one thing that actually works pretty good. The problem comes in is When the traveling public goes through there, they see a flagger taking a picture of them, that can cause problems. So it has its good and its bad. We kind of try to discourage that though. Law enforcement officers in our work zones, this is another thing that helps slow traffic down. Blue lights will slow traffic down. It brings attention to our work zones, and it makes everything safer for our traveling public as well. We've increased the use of law enforcement officers in our work zones in the past couple years. So for instance, if we have an interstate project now, we're required to have a presence officer that is sitting at what we call the critical safety point. The critical safety point is a quarter of a mile before the taper if there's no queue backing up. If the queue is backing up, then the officer stays a quarter of a mile before that queue. They don't sit at the queue. So it's going to be a fluid operation. They may have to move up and down the shoulder to keep up with that queue. And all we're doing is drawing attention to those stopped vehicles. This is another thing that we have documented proof now that this kind of stuff works. We've increased the use of law enforcement officers, as well as what we have a queue detection system, which is devices that scan and monitor traffic speeds coming through our work zones. It sends messages to message boards. It'll say stop traffic 2 miles ahead or stop traffic 5 miles ahead. So what we're doing is we're letting the traveling public know that traffic is going to be stopped 2 miles or 5 miles ahead, and we have that law enforcement officer that's keeping up with the queue with that stopped traffic. Last year in 2024, we had something happen that has never happened before. We had 0 fatalities on the interstate at the queue for work zones. That's never happened before. Most of our fatalities that has happened on the roadway has happened at the queue. That is a vehicle at a high rate of speed running in the back of a vehicle at a low rate of speed, or a stopped vehicle. They're usually serious and cause fatalities. We had 0 of those. So that let us know that the use of this law enforcement with queue detection systems is decreasing those fatalities on the roadway. Now, there's a couple things that law enforcement officers have to do. Is they have to take a work zone detail training course. It's an 1.5-hour course. I actually teach the course along with Ron Whitaker. He is a retired troop commander from Louisiana State Police. And we go through and tell these law enforcement officers when they're needed, when they're not needed, where they're effective, where they're not effective. And we go through all the different locations where they're supposed to be. They're never supposed to be parked in a taper. They need to be in the advanced warning area, or they need to be at the beginning of the queue, a quarter of a mile before the queue, or they could be in the actual work zone. If they're in the work zone, they should never be parked behind the truck mounted attenuator. See this quite often as well. That truck mounted attenuator is there to protect the traveling public as well as the workers, and if someone runs through that work zone, they should hit the truck mounted attenuator first and not our law enforcement officer. So we go through that, and after teaching a lot of these law enforcement officers, we've come to find out that these contractors are telling them to get in these dangerous locations, telling them to park by the taper, by the error board, and that's not where they're supposed to be. Telling them to pull up behind the TMA because the oncoming traffic cannot see the blue lights if they're in front of them. But there's a system to that, and they're supposed to offset. They're supposed to be parked in front of that truck mounted attenuator and kind of hugging the right edge line, and the truck mounted attenuator is sitting in the middle of the lane. They're offset so oncoming traffic can see the blue lights. Here's another one for the law enforcement presence, where you see them sitting on the shoulder of the road with their lights on. They're near the speed limit reduction sign, and that is strategically placed about a quarter of a mile before the taper. So if you ride out to one of your project sites and the law enforcement officer is sitting at the error board or in the buffer space or anywhere where they're not supposed to be, you need to make note of that and contact the traffic control supervisor and tell them they need to move. We also have an enforcement spec where we pay law enforcement officers to go out and write tickets out on the job site. This doesn't happen very often. It can happen a lot more. It should happen a lot more. Just writing tickets at sporadic times. And what that does is let the traveling public know that, you know, we're not just sitting there with blue lights on. We are actually issuing citations, writing speeding tickets, and those tickets are higher when they get caught and workers are present. We also discuss in these classes when they're doing enforcement, they're not allowed to clock in the actual work zone and pull people over in the work zone. They can actually radar from the work zone, but they can't pull anybody over until they get past the termination area, past the work zone. That way, we're not creating queues, people slowing down and causing heavy braking near our work zone. So there's a process to that, and we go through that with them pretty extensively. Traffic control, if we have to close the road, if we have detours or diversions, we may use law enforcement officers for that. We also use them for incidents. If we have an incident on a roadway, we may not have enough time to set up the proper traffic control. Just say, for instance, if we have a crash in the work zone and it kind of blocks all the through lanes, we may have law enforcement forcing traffic off of an exit before they get to it. We won't have signs up. We don't have time. We have to act now. Have to act quick to get the traffic over there to try to prevent secondary crashes. So we go through the process of all that as well. Question: a law enforcement officer must be trained in a DOTD training course before working a detail as a presence officer. And that answer is true. They must attend the course. They actually attend the course. We get a roster with their name, their agency, and their badge number, and it goes into a DOTD database. You have access to this DOTD database. You can email me. My email address will be up at the end of this presentation if you're having trouble getting access to this. But if you're reimbursing law enforcement for their services on our job site, you need to verify that they've been trained. And by doing that, you go to the DOTD database, verify that their name, badge number, and their agency is in there and that they have not expired. That certification is good for 4 years. They have to retake the course every 4 years. Duties as a traffic control supervisor: they coordinate all traffic control operations. The prime contractor is responsible for all subcontractors, utility companies, and any suppliers that may be on the project. For instance, if you have a supplier that's bringing concrete piling out to the job site, that truck driver has no idea where they're supposed to park legally and by contract requirements to be in a safe location. A lot of times these truck drivers will pull into our buffer space. It is the traffic control supervisor's job to go tell that truck driver, you're not allowed to park here. You need to go move to the work area or park outside the clear zone until we can get you unloaded. All right. The traffic control supervisor is also responsible if there's any incidents or crashes, noting that in the diary and turning that in to the LPA project engineer immediately. They are also responsible for the maintenance, cleanliness, replacement, and removal of traffic control devices during work and non-work hours. We're going to go through inspections here just in a little bit and tells them when they're supposed to inspect. But even when they're not working and they have traffic control devices on the project, they are required to still do a daily inspection to verify that the signs are still up, the devices are still there, they haven't been blown down, to keep everything safe. They also have to ensure that the workers are wearing the proper PPE. Flaggers are required to wear Class 2 vests in the daytime, Class 3 at night, and they're also required to wear the fluorescent yellow, lime green vest for flaggers. Other workers can wear the orange if they want to, but flaggers are required to wear the lime green. Traffic control supervisor is also responsible for the inspection of all traffic control devices every single calendar day. Holidays, weekends, every single day, even if they're not working. They can delegate that inspection to a TCT, but they need to note that in their diary. When they fill out their diary for their traffic control, they need to put in the remarks that they did not do the inspection that day. It was delegated to a traffic control technician, and that name should be in the diary. This is the pamphlet that I was talking about earlier, the quality guidelines for temporary traffic control devices and features. This is just our comparison chart. And it just tells you what's acceptable, what's rejectable, and what's marginal. And it covers cones, drums, vests, arrow boards, portable changeable message signs. It has all of those traffic control devices in there, and you should be using this. If you've taken traffic control supervisor, you've gotten this pamphlet in your packet. Traffic control should be inspected by the TCS on every weekend, holiday, or other non-work days at least once a day. They could go out there at any time. They could go morning, afternoon, midday, but they have to drive through there at least once a day, do an inspection, and document that inspection into our site manager system. Traffic control supervisor needs to do an inspection at least once a week at night, and the first night that any changes have been made in temporary traffic control. They're verifying that the lights are working. The retroreflective sheeting is operating like it's supposed to. And that is one thing, if you do this long enough, you'll see that a lot of times that retroreflective sheeting looks good in the daytime, but you drive through it at night and it's dead. It can have some sort of film on it. It could just be old, which makes it looks good in the daytime, but at night it's not retroreflecting that light back to the source like it's supposed to be doing. Our traffic control diaries, the TCS has to maintain this traffic control diary in the DOTD traffic control logbook app. They log in when they take the traffic control supervisor course. They get a certificate. That certificate goes to DOTD. They get a user ID and a temporary password to log into Site Manager. They could change that password, and then they have access to every project that their company is the prime contractor for. Just say, for instance, if contractor ABC has 9 jobs going on active with DOTD, that one TCS will have access to all 9 of those projects. They can do traffic control on any one of them. As a LPA project engineer inspector, you need to be reviewing these diaries at least once a week, verifying that they're filling them out correctly, putting the correct information on there. If they don't fill these out within a timely period, they get locked out and they can't go back and correct it. That being said, if they happen to get locked out of their account, they can't get logged in, the system is down, whatever reason, they're still required to turn in a paper diary every single day. And if they're not turning in this paper diary every single day and they're not doing the electronic one, they're going to get charged $150 a day for every one of those diaries that are missing. So they should be notifying you if they can't get onto the system to say, hey, I'm trying to log on, I'm locked out, can't have access to the system, I've emailed the administrator, and here is my paper diary for today. If there's a problem with that, they should be emailing, I think it's on the next slide, but there's an email address that all of the traffic control supervisors have been given. If they have any issues with logging in, issues with their diary, completing them, not saving them, whatever that may be, and that email address is dotd-smadm@la.gov. I'll leave this up here for a second in case anyone wants to take a picture of this or write this down. You as an LPA project engineer, you're going to have to log into this to review the diaries to Site Manager. If you have issues, this is the email address. This goes to about 5 different people. They do a really good job of answering very quick. Most of our situations are handled, within a couple hours of submitting that email. Any and all deficiencies noted in the traffic control diary shall also be noted in the contractor diary. So that being said, there's been some misconception in the past is that I will pull up a contract and pull 50 diaries from that contract. All 50 of those diaries said that the traffic control was good every single day. We all know that signs get knocked over, cones get knocked over, things get dirty. We have incidents on the job site, and those have not been noted in there. A lot of the traffic control supervisors are telling me, well, I did have problems on the job, but I corrected them. I stood the signs back up, and then I just made my diary to say that everything was corrected when I left. That's not the intent. The intent is when you do your inspection and you see that signs are knocked down, you note that in your diary. I've done an inspection at 10:15 a.m. I had 2 signs knocked down for my flagging operation, and I stood them back up. That's what they need to do. They could be brief, but what happens is if there's an incident and a plaintiff's attorney subpoenas all these diaries, they're going to bring it before the jury and say that, you know, I got 200 diaries right here, and every one of them says that everything was perfect every single day. Do you really believe that this traffic control supervisor was doing the inspection like they were supposed to? Because we've all driven through construction sites and we've all seen dirty signs and we've all seen signs knocked down and devices knocked down, but none of that is noted. So our traffic control supervisor that is in charge of our temporary traffic control out there is not doing their duty and filling this diary out the correct way. And they use that against us. So make sure you need to verify that you're reviewing these diaries and that they're filling them out correctly. If they falsify them, they could be brought on other charges. This is falsifying a public record, which is against the law. And a lot of times, if there's litigation involved, that's another thing that they seek out. Those plaintiff's attorneys are showing the jury that you was incompetent in filling this out. You said everything was correct, and I have pictures right here of barricades that's knocked down. The grass is dead underneath them, which lets us to believe that that barricade has been down for days, if not weeks, and none of these reports are reflecting that. All right, so if they're filling them out incorrectly, they need to be charged $150 a day. If they're not filling them out at all, they get charged $150 a day for that they don't have a diary. What should be noted in that diary? What happened that day? There's a format on there. They have different operations, whether they're doing asphalt, paving, driveways, turnouts, concrete work, soil cement. They have to check each thing that they're doing. They also have to check what traffic control plan that they're using, whether it's the Louisiana traffic control standards, or if it's a specific sheet in the actual contract where we have a project specific plan. If everything was corrected, when the last time these devices was cleaned. The more they could fill out, the better off they are. The problem is a lot of times these are filled out at the end of the day when the traffic control supervisor and everyone is ready to go home, and they just fill it out as quickly as possible and leave a lot of information out. So if you see that in your inspection of these diaries, make note to the traffic control supervisor, hey, you need to fill these out completely or I'm going to start charging you $150 a day for these incomplete diaries. All right. As a LPA CNI project engineer, you can suspend all or part of the work operations that are going on. If you having issues on the job site like missing signs, flaggers not doing what they're supposed to be doing, give them a warning. Tell the traffic control supervisor. If it continues to happen, you could shut that project down until we have a safety meeting and discuss how important this safety and traffic control is, and then they could go back to work after that. But you should not be letting them to continue to work with dangerous conditions for the workers, the traveling public, which is motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists. If you have uneven pavement, this is another one that I run into a lot. If you have uneven pavement out on the roadway, that is very dangerous for motorcyclists. They have to have uneven pavement signs up at the beginning of that uneven pavement and periodically through it to let the motorcyclists know that, you know, if you're going to swap lanes, you're going to have a drop off there. It's uneven pavement. We're involved currently in a couple of lawsuits right now because of that exact same thing. Contractors fail to put up the signs. Loose gravel is another one. All right, so notification is given to the contractor, either verbal or written. If you give a verbal to say, hey, all operations are suspended until we have a safety meeting to get our traffic control back into specification, you need to follow that up in writing to say that, you know, we're going to have a meeting on such and such day. Once we have this meeting and everybody's back on the same page, the contractor can go back to work. Serious deficiencies such as things that can be life-threatening, having non-crash-worthy devices. Just as an example, having a blunt end of a concrete barrier exposed to traffic inside the clear zone without the proper protection, like a water-filled attenuator on it, that deserves immediate attention. That needs to be corrected before any other work operations continue, because that can cause a serious crash, fatality, or a serious injury. If a contractor fails to comply several times, their traffic control supervisor certificate can be revoked. I need all that information in writing, how many times they were warned. I need pictures of the violations, and ATSA will pull their actual certification or their training certificate. They will be removed from the DOTD database, and they will not have access to the diaries. ATSA will allow them to take the class one more time and pass the exam, and they will give them another certificate. If they get decertified again, ATSA will not issue them another certificate. They will have a 90-day probationary period to verify, that they're under probation, and they have to make sure that everything is correct and they're not falsifying anything, and they're doing a lot better job than they were before when they got decertified. All right. Now, most contractors have multiple TCSs. Some of our small contractors only have one or two. If that one traffic control supervisor gets decertified and they don't have a traffic control supervisor, then they can't go to work, because they have to have a traffic control supervisor for every project. So time doesn't stop for that. So most of the time, once you give them a good warning and tell them what these things can happen, they're usually corrected pretty quick. All right, a question. The traffic control diary only has to be kept up to date on a weekly basis. True or false? And that answer is false. They have to do these, contractors have to do these daily. You should be inspecting them on a weekly basis. Now, if you're having trouble getting access, once again, email me, or you could email the DOTD-SMADM@LA.gov, and we can get you read-only access to those diaries. Crash testing of devices. Once again, all of our devices have to be crash tested. This is a sign stand. Sign stands, temporary portable sign stands, have to be crash tested. When they crash test them, when we use them out on the job site, they have to be used exactly like they was crash tested. And in that case, this sign stand, you could look at the back of that sign, there's a clip that slides up and holds the top of that sign in place in that stand. If that clip is not slid up and securing that sign in the stand, when it gets hit by a vehicle, that sign can come out of the stand and go through the windshield of the impacted vehicle, which is not going to be a good outcome. These things are designed when that is clipped in and a vehicle hits it, the sign and the stand shoots forward. Now that becomes a projectile, but our signs are typically spaced at least 500 feet away from our workers. So that should not be an issue with that projectile or that sign hitting our workers. But barricade warning lights, they have to be secured to the barricade or the drum exactly like the manufacturer calls for. So all of our devices, sign stands, type 3 barricades, water field attenuators, they all have letters of approval, either NCHR P350 or MASH approval letters. Those need to be turned in to the LPA or the CENI project engineer at the pre-construction meeting. And basically that's saying that we're using these type 3 barricades that is manufactured by ABC Incorporated. They've been crash tested. Here's their crash tested approval letter, and we're going to be using these throughout the project. You should have these on file to verify that all the barricades are out there, or this brand, this model, and they're used correctly. You can see the picture here. The lights that are mounted on that barricade, they're mounted through that upright post. That means that's how they've been tested. If they mount those through that plastic panel, if a vehicle hits them, that's a battery pack. It's heavy, and it could come through and go through the windshield. That's why they have to be secured to that upright post. The sign is made of a lightweight substrate, just like the approval letter says, and the breakaway system is at the bottom, and it states in the crash testing letter that if you ballast or weight these devices down, everything has to be below the breakaway point. So what they've done here was they took these tire rings and put them below the breakaway point. So if a vehicle hits them, They break away. That's not going to affect any of the crash testing properties of this barricade. The ballast or the weight, that is a hazard. And these are designed to stay on the ground if it impacts a vehicle. The barricades now have to be made of this light plastic material. They can't be made of plywood or aluminum or anything like that. They have to be made with this lightweight substrate and be accompanied by that crash testing letter. So a couple different things about crash testing. We're in a bit of a transition phase. Kind of the older way we used to crash test was NCHR P350, and this is just crash testing parameters. They use smaller vehicles to crash test. And just say, for instance, if they're crash testing concrete barrier, Jersey barrier is NCHR P350 approved, which means they take a vehicle and they hit this barrier, and if it contains and redirects the vehicle, it passed NCHR P350. As time goes on, the most predominant vehicle on the roadway now is not smaller cars, they're larger SUVs and pickup trucks with a higher center of gravity. So when you hit these Jersey barriers with these larger vehicles, they're not containing and redirecting the vehicle. So they have updated the crash testing parameters to go to MASH, the Manual for Assessing Safety Hardware, where we take a larger vehicle at a higher rate of speed and we hit, just using for example, the concrete barrier. Now we have to have what we call type F barriers, which means that they're sturdier, they're heavier, they're designed a little different, and they are designed to contain and redirect these larger vehicles with a higher center of gravity. Any device manufactured after 2019 needs to meet MASH crash testing acceptance. Devices that were manufactured before 2019, we can continue using those throughout their service life, but after they're destroyed, hole in them, cracked, whatever, they need to be taken out and cannot be repaired. Impact angle is also another thing that they crash testing for. Concrete barrier, you know, we test for 25-degree impact angle, which is pretty steep. If someone hits that at 25 degrees, it does extensive damage on that. Test level 4 is all we have to meet in temporary traffic control. That is a 22,000-pound single unit truck at 50 miles an hour. 56 miles an hour for the truck for MASH at a 15-degree impact angle. Pickup truck is going to be a 5,000-pound pickup truck at 62 miles an hour with a 25-degree impact angle. These are more stringent, they're harder to pass in MASH. From what I could understand in this transition period, AASHTO is in charge of MASH and they're kind of backed up, so we have a lot of devices that, they think gonna pass, but we haven't got the acceptance letter from AASHTO. So just make sure that at the pre-construction meeting, when they give these crash testing work zone letters, that they are accompanied by the proper NCHR P350 or MASH crash testing approval letters. Any questions can be directed to me by email. This is my email address and this is my cell phone number. I do a lot of traffic control training. I do traffic control technician, supervisor, flagger. I do all the law enforcement training, and I tell all of them the same thing. If you have a dangerous situation on your job site, call me. I don't care what time it is, day, night, weekend, whatever, holiday, I will answer the phone. More than likely, if I can't answer the phone, leave me a message and I'll call you back. I also respond to text messages if you text me. I would much rather handle a problem as it comes along than to try to wait till in the morning and we have an incident that night. So law enforcement especially, they give me calls at night because typically they're on our jobs at night, and if they see something dangerous, they'll call me. Hey, I got a contractor out here, the truck mount attenuator's broke down, they are not able to get it out here on the interstate, and they're telling me that they're gonna continue working without the TMA. I will call that contractor and tell them you're not allowed to work. So it's the same thing with you. If you have a question, you can email me. If it's an emergency or something that needs an answer immediately, give me a call. With that, I'll leave you with any questions. Just email me anytime you have a question or give me a call. And thank you very much.